Now that we all know who they all are, why are we trying this judge concept? This feels like a Dusty Rhodes idea. It seems like a lot of shows around this time started using them. And the reason I start to think it's a Dusty Rhodes idea is you mentioned on our Goldberg episode, which is available now in the archives, that Dusty really liked angles that involved championship rings because he felt like that's what they used in real sports. Is that the thinking here? Boxing uses judges, so we should too?
Yeah, that's the thinking here. And also to me, and I'm going back to back then, and even more so now when I watched it again, to me, they had the judges there and you knew the judges were going to determine the outcome of the match, right?
Yeah, you would feel like, it's pointless to have them there if it's just going to be a clean finish. Exactly.
To me, it kind of it foreshadowed what was to come. It did. I even knew, I didn't know what the finish was going to be, but I damn well knew as this was going along that these judges are going to rule this thing a draw. I knew that was going to be it.
It's worth mentioning here that Darius Rucker, who many still associate with Hootie and the Blowfish, has the robe that Flair is wearing for this show. He bought it at an auction more than a dozen years ago, and every now and again we'll tweet out pictures of it. So find Darius on Twitter if you'd like to see this robe present day. Famously, this is a 45-minute time limit to this match. And as a reminder, J.J. Dillon is locked inside a shark cage, suspended above the ring. How long has this cage over the ring concept been a part of wrestling? We've seen it for a long time. The first time I remember seeing it is in Atlanta, but I'm sure it happened a lot earlier than that. Do you remember anybody being booked in one of these as like a rib because they were scared of heights or something like that?
Yeah, I remember Cornette being booked in one, and I think Cornette was afraid of heights. I think that was pretty much well known, but after the scaffold match, which I think, and that's going to be, I don't know, we'll talk about the Night of the Skywalkers another time. I think you had everybody afraid of a scaffold match back then. Everybody, even the Road Warriors were afraid. But I remember Cornette being suspended in the cage. And I remember Cornette just kind of sitting down at the bottom of the cage. And I guess they all thought he was afraid of heights, and maybe it was done as a rib to him. I knew Jim Cornette was afraid to fly. Knew that. So being suspended in the air, he probably was afraid of that as well. So
J.J. Dillon, of course, had a big role behind the scenes.
Can I interrupt you here?
Yeah.
Do you know something I don't know, or you set me up for some shit like you did with Ric Flair and...
No.
Okay. Because, you are setting me up with some shit.
Well, I mean, that's what we do.
Yeah, okay.
I want to mention, though, we're going to talk a lot about J.J. Dillon on this show. Not this one in particular, but J.J. was kind of Dusty's right-hand man in the front office with a lot of the details of the booking, and he's one of the unsung heroes of Jim Crockett Promotions. Would you agree with that, Tony?
Yeah, J.J. was one of the in an office that was a mom and pop's run company, very understaffed. J.J. got a lot accomplished. Many times when J.J. would walk out to do an interview with me, he would let me know what was going on when other people wouldn't. And he had everything. He had this red book of his where he had everything in the book, all matches, all house shows that we all looked through. We would make copies of it so we could do the promos on. He was the most organized man I've ever worked with. He really was. And as a matter of fact, Conrad, I want to thank you for this. But since we started doing What Happened When, I have reconnected with a lot of people, been calling, getting, I know some people that can get me telephone numbers. And I called JJ the other day and talked to him. And he's going to be at WrestleCon as well. You're exactly right. Unsung hero. Whatever came out of Dusty's brain, JJ would put down on paper, would remind Dusty of it, would show Dusty what came down. And the only thing Dusty had to do was create in his head, and JJ was there to put it down on paper. He wasn't a heel manager like a Jim Cornette, but he was still a very good heel manager. So I agree with that. I agree. JJ's a great man. And I'm so glad I got to talk to him a couple of days ago.
This match
thank you for that, buddy.
You're welcome, kind sir. And we hope everybody's digging it. Go hit the subscribe button. Tell your friends. Tony's back in wrestling, man.
Yes, sir, baby. I'm back.
Come on.
I'm back. Put your butt in that seat. This is the greatest. Shit.
I'm
not saying that.
This is things coming out.
I'm charging you $1 every time I say it.
Okay. Are you $50 so far?
I should charge you for every time I say fuck. And then you'd be broke.
I don't have comma money. Here we are. Sting's coming out party. The main event against Ric Flair.
Yeah.
Of course, many remember he was a part of the UWF, and they have been purchased the previous April. He's gaining some steam here as a baby face. He's got the blonde hair, the crew cut, the colorful gear, the face paint. He's so 80s, it's not even funny. Ric Flair has been credited with putting Sting on the map with this match, and a lot of people say that Flair even handpicked Sting for the show. Do you remember Sting being in this match with Flair as being Flair's idea, or did somebody else have this idea and want to just try it?
I think Dusty had the idea, but I think Dusty discussed a lot of what he wanted to do with Flair because, they had a lot of respect for each other. So I have a feeling this was Dusty's idea, but I have a feeling that, that he consulted with Ric Flair before it happened. I kind of equate this match with when Ric Flair put Ricky Steamboat on the map by having Steamboat beat him for the world television title on TV many, many years ago, and that began one of the great feuds of all time. So I kind of equate this with that. Flair knew Ric Flair, as you know, was maybe the greatest worker ever. And one of the reasons he was the greatest worker ever is that he knew that to be a great worker, he had to have a great partner, babyface or heel, across the ring. Steamboat was that. Sting was that. Terry Funk was that. I mean, we can go down the list. Junkyard Dog was not that. May he rest in peace. Great guy. So this was one of the guys that probably Flair was very high on, and Dusty thought it would be a good thing, and they agreed to it, and we saw it.
Do you remember anybody in the office being pro Sting besides Dusty? Was the common thinking that this guy could be the guy, or is this supposed to just be a one-off? It feels like a one-off because there's not much follow-up after this.
No, I thought we all thought he could be the guy. I don't think there was any feeling that this was a one-off. Maybe we dropped the ball on that.
Yeah, I think so. We'll get into that in a minute. It's worth mentioning here, a lot of fans remember that the Ultimate Warrior and Sting started together. Right. But some fans somehow believe that Sting was only pushed in response to the WWF pushing Warrior, but that's just not the case. The Warrior started with the WWF in June of '87, and that's just a couple of months after Crockett buys the UWF that April. Warrior would make his pay-per-view debut this very same night as the Clash of the Champions at WrestleMania 4, and he wouldn't win the Intercontinental title until SummerSlam '88, months after this. So let's get to the match. Lots of Flair chops early. Sting starts to no-sell some of those. Sting controls the bout until he rushes for Flair in the corner. Rick moves, and then Nate takes over. Flair controls the action for an extended period of time, which was kind of standard for Flair matches back then. Somewhere around the 30-minute mark, Flair gets the figure 4. Sting is able to reverse it and nearly gets Rick to submit. When we get to the 40-minute mark, the ring announcer Tom Miller starts doing a minute-by-minute countdown, and there's lots of near finishes by both men until Sting hits a Stinger Splash and then the Scorpion Deathlock with less than 30 seconds left. The Nature Boy holds on until the final bell, and then we go to the judge's decision. I don't know why we have 5 judges, and it's revealed that we do going into this, so you kind of know this is going to be a scorecard situation. But we've got 5 judges, and we go to a 2-2-1 result because Sandy Scott called it a draw. What do you think? Go ahead.
Can I interrupt you here?
Yeah.
It was 5 judges, but didn't Tom Miller only reveal 3 judges making the call?
He may have.
He revealed gesture for Sting, Patty Mullen for Flair, and Sandy Scott calling a draw. He did not mention Eddie Haskell. He did not mention Jason Hervey unless I saw an edited version of it.
Well, let me ask this again because maybe I wasn't paying attention. Who did Patty Mullen vote for?
Ric Flair. You are one shit disturber, buddy.
What'd you think of the match, man?
No, you are listen. You are one shit disturber.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Go ahead.
What'd you think of the match? It won the 1988 Wrestling Observer Match of the Year.
Yeah. What I think of the match? I think that was the match that showed how great Ric Flair really is. I mean, the old thing in the business, and you probably know this, Conrad, was the heel always called the match.
Right.
He called a great match that night. Sting was still, Sting was a good worker, okay? But Sting was elevated that night because he was in the match with Ric Flair. That's what I thought about that match. Also, I can tell you what I thought about this match, and I'm going to say this very honestly. I thought, looking at it again, and I watched it a couple of days ago, and I'm kind of now watching it as an observer, armchair quarterback. Back then, I thought that I was as good as Jim Ross in my mind. But after listening to that match, there was no question that Jim Ross was superior to me. He said some things that just made me laugh. I mean, he was so good at putting guys over. And I didn't realize it back at that time. But I just thought his excitement in his voice and the way he said things were just absolutely tremendous. So that's one of the things I took away from that match as well. I even sent him a text, and I said, I'm watching the Clash of the Champions. Let me see if I still got the text. I said, I'm watching the Clash of the Champions, and I think this is back during the Fantastics match against the Midnight Express. And he threw out a line that I just almost fell off my chair with. He said, the referee has about as much control of this match as Festus did when Matt Dillon left town. And those things came out of Jim Ross's mouth, and they were folksy, they were Southernisms, but they just worked. So that's one other thing I took away from that match.
Rick won the 1988 Most Outstanding Wrestler of the Year award from the Observer that year. Sting would win the Most Improved Wrestler award and Most Charismatic award.